Do not address the chief of police in that manner. Continue on.
I address you too in that manner too.
Noah had gotten up and criticized the police.
Do not address the chief of police in that manner.
The chief of police and mayor of this town are two top fascists, and they need to go.
Your comments are ceased.
He got arrested for it. He was told to be silent. He wouldn't. He got arrested.
Yeah, I'm literally trying to leave, and you're stopping me. You are making more time because I'm trying to walk out the door, and you stop me from walking out the door.
You can say mean words to the government, and sometimes the government deserves to hear mean words, and they can't arrest you for those words.
Go do your activism somewhere where somebody cares.
Do you remember the Tayvin Galanakis case from Newton, Iowa? It was one of those false arrest of a college football player DUI cases. Completely absurd. The body cam footage went viral. This was a couple of years ago. In the town where that happened, this kid went and spoke to his city hall. He criticized the police. He criticized the mayor right in front of them, and then he was arrested for it. Well, the Institute for Justice took on his case. They filed a federal civil rights lawsuit, and just a couple of days ago, the IJ secured a huge victory in his case. Absolutely blasted the city, blasted the mayor, blasted the cops involved. A huge win. Today, I got a chance to sit down and talk with Patrick Jaicomo, senior attorney with the IJ, about what happened and about what it means, and about how you can help moving forward. Tell me about the initial incident.
Yeah, so the Institute for Justice represents Noah Peterson, and all of this stuff that I'm about to describe took place in 2022. Noah Peterson, he is from a small town in Iowa called Newton. Newton had like its own kind of scandal because a police officer named Nathan Winters had famously arrested a kid named Tayvin Galanakis on DUI charges, even though the kid had blown a zero on a breathalyzer. And it was a scandal, and it was covered. And you might have actually covered it way back when it happened. And it's just one of those like body cam videos that you watch and you're just like, I can't believe this is how this works. I can't believe this is how the police behave.
Hi there. How you doing, sir? Good, how are you? Good. My name's Officer Winters with the Newton Police Department. The reason I pulled you over is because you have your bright lights on. Where are you coming from? Friend's house. Okay. Anything to drink over there? Nope. We're gonna go back here, okay? Cool. You don't have anything on you? No bombs, guns, drugs? No bombs or no drugs. Okay, let's go back here. Well, sir, I don't believe you are 2 for 2. How many steps did I say to take?
Like 8 or 9?
I said 9. Why'd you take 14 and then 15?
I thought you were gonna tell me when to turn.
I said to count your steps out loud. Why are you shaking so much?
It's freezing, man. Look at you, you got all these clothes on and I got shorts on and it's raining. And you false accusing me, so of course I'm gonna be a little nervous.
I wear shorts when it's 30 below.
Congratulations.
I got one more test for you.
Give me a little blow.
I will.
Blow zeros.
I will here in a minute. A couple more tests here.
Let's blow real quick. I blew zeros, so now you're trying to think I smoke weed. Is he allowed to do that?
Yes, he is. You smoked some weed at your friend's house?
No.
You hit a pin?
Nope.
Why is your field sobriety so poor? And why are you so lethargic and slow moving and speaking with a slurred speech? And your eyes are watery and your eyes are bloodshot.
You know why they're watery? Probably because we're in rain right now. I play college football, I told you that. We get tested every Friday.
I think you're under the influence.
You think I'm impaired?
Yes.
Well, I'm not. I want to go home. You wasted my time.
Turn around, put your hands behind your back. Right now you're being placed under arrest for operating while intoxicated, okay?
Sir, I'm not intoxicated. I blew zeros.
So it had kind of become a minor scandal. And because Noah was from Newton, he wanted to sort of dig into it. So he started doing some public records searching and found that there were some other suspicious behavior going on at Newton Police Department, and also that this officer Winters had a domestic abuse restraining order against him or something like that. He'd had some sort of pretty serious issues with his ex. And so in response to all this, Noah put together a written statement that he submitted to Newton about his concerns with the police department and aspects of abuse and what had happened with Tayvin Galanakis. And the city declined to have it read at the city council meeting. And so as a result of this, Noah, not to be deterred, went physically himself to the city council meeting the next time. And he read from a statement where he was critical of, the things I just described, and citing a derogatory comment rule that the city had. And in fact, many, if not most cities have a rule like this that says, like, you're not allowed to say mean things about people because of decorum or something. The mayor gavelled Noah to stop speaking, and Noah basically did stop. Noah had to stop speaking because he wanted to continue his statement, but they forced him away from the podium. Noah kind of was arguing. All of this was happening, but Noah was very calm. There's video of these incidents. And because of all this, the mayor has Noah arrested for disorderly conduct. And, I think one of the silliest portions of this is, and if you read the police report on the charges, they list the victim of Noah's having said mean words at the city council meeting. The victim is listed as society. And so because of this, at another city council meeting, Noah returns to finish the statement that he'd been gavelled off of the previous time, goes again. And this time he's critical of the mayor and the police chief, who he calls fascists. He says, you two are the top fascists in this town, or something along those lines. And again, he gets gavelled to stop.
And I'm going to speak a little bit about last meeting, and this is what I think should happen.
I think the top two fascists in this town, Mayor Michael Hansen and the chief of police, need to be removed from power. They have shown themselves to
Do
be
not address the chief of police in that manner. Continue on.
I address you two in that manner too, to be clear.
Do not address the chief of police
Okay,
in that
the
manner.
chief of
You may
police
continue on.
and mayor of this town are two top fascists, and they need to go.
Your comments are ceased.
They have shown
Comments are
themselves
over.
to be unfit.
Noah, your
positions.
comments are over.
Why are they over? If you can't handle being told to leave power.
Again, he's run off of the podium. He's leaving the city council meeting. And at this point, they arrest him. There's video of him getting arrested where he's basically saying, like, hey, why are you arresting me? I'm already walking out of here.
I'm literally trying to leave, and you're stopping me. You're making more time because I'm trying to walk out the door, and you stop me from walking out the door.
And the reason they were arresting him is because this was pre-planned. So the mayor and the city police chief and some other folks at the city had basically predicted that Noah would come back. Well, they knew he would come back because his name was on the speaker's list, but then they had a plan to, teach him a lesson for this incident as well.
Would not be allowed, and per the rules of this council, will not be allowed here either, as long as I'm sitting in this chair. It is disrespectful of the men and women you've elected to do your business, and as long as I'm sitting in this chair and we have rules to enforce, I will do so. I make no apologies for that whatsoever. This is a business meeting conducted to take care of your business. And if you want to be politically active on issues, there's plenty of place and time for that. It is not here in this council chambers. Make sure you get a good recording back there while you're pointing that at me. I want you to get every word correct. We will now resume the council meeting. Go do your activism somewhere where somebody cares.
So again, he's arrested. He's put in handcuffs. He's taken to the jail. All the jail things that happen to you happen to him. So, he's booked, he's strip searched, he's forced to sit there before he's released. After county prosecutors decline to pursue charges, the city goes ahead and tries to move forward with charges anyway on one of these incidents. The charges against Noah are dismissed because they violate the First Amendment. And then they drop the other charges. And so at this point, the Institute for Justice takes on Noah's case, and we sue the city of Newton, Iowa, as well as its mayor and its police chief for the shenanigans here because, you can't arrest people for speech. This is something that I've had to say for the last decade, which I can't believe that I have to say, but I have to keep saying it because I think there are a lot of petty tyrants across the United States, especially in small towns who are used to kind of being able to bully their way into whatever they want. And so in this instance, the way that bullying took place was this derogatory comment rule that was interpreted and applied at the sole discretion of the mayor, which allowed the mayor to, claim that Noah had to stop speaking before the allotted time period and then having him arrested when he didn't. This rule is supposed to be some rule of decorum where you're not supposed to say mean things about city officials. I don't know how you can criticize the government without running afoul of this rule, especially as it was interpreted and applied here. And another problem in this case was Noah had gotten up and criticized the police. He got arrested for it. He was told to be silent. He wouldn't. He got arrested. Others had gotten up and criticized other city officials, code inspectors and such. None of them were gavelled down. None of them were arrested. So that's in one sense, that's good, but it's also this sort of selective enforcement problem. And so that is sort of the the table setting for what we brought the lawsuit about, which was we sued the mayor himself in his individual capacity, the police chief in his individual capacity, and then the city itself as having violated Noah's rights under the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment. So, of course, you've got the First Amendment thing here, which is the speech needs to be protected. You can't be punished for speaking. The Fourth Amendment is you were arrested without probable cause, because probable cause cannot be contingent on you not exercising other rights, in this case, speaking. So saying you spoke in such a way cannot provide the probable cause for an arrest. And then the 14th Amendment, which is selective enforcement, because like I said, other people had gotten up and said mean things about other city officials, but it was the fact that Noah got up and said mean things about the police and then the mayor that caused him to be arrested. And what's interesting is this is a case where we've got to go to discovery. And so we got to depose the mayor and these other folks, and we got them to admit to completely ludicrous things. And the mayor in particular, the city took this posture that one of the reasons why what they'd done was okay was that Noah calling the mayor and the police chief fascists was defamatory. Also that it was defamatory for Noah to have said that the Newton Police Department was protecting domestic abusers. So in the depositions, we were asking the mayor, the police chief about these things because, again, this officer in the underlying incident, there's no dispute that he had a domestic abuse restraining order against him for whatever he was doing with his wife or partner. And as to the fascism thing, we asked the mayor, what's a fascist? And he produced a completely incoherent gobbledygook definition of what fascism was. Obviously, this was just viewed by him as a bad word. And it's not good enough to think that you're being called a bad name and be able to arrest people for that. We also had the mayor admit that there were various other people who had spoken and said things that would have violated this silly derogatory comment rule. And he kind of hemmed and hawed about how, well, he knows those people and he knows they're good people and they were very wrong in what they said they shouldn't have said. But, there were good reasons for that. And so that's why he just let them go ahead and keep speaking. But, what Noah said was a bridge too far. And I think the really indicting thing about what the mayor said in his deposition was that Noah would have been allowed to get up and speak his full period of time if he'd gotten up and praised the police department and said all the good things the police department was doing. But because he got up and said critical things about the police department and its officers, that would violate this rule. And therefore he had to stop speaking. And because he didn't, he was committing the crime of disorderly conduct. Of course, we know none of that is true because now, after discovery and pending cross motions for summary judgment, the district court in Iowa has held that both the mayor and the police chief individually, as well as the city itself, violated Noah's rights under the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendments, and did so in such a way that the mayor and police chief are not protected by qualified immunity. And so what we were able to do in this case was further build on the sort of retaliatory arrest jurisprudence that we have established through our cases like Gonzalez versus Trevino, which my colleague Anya Bidwell argued at the Supreme Court a few years ago, and which is cited in the opinion granting summary judgment for Noah, and also kind of expand what it means to be able to speak without fear of this sort of retaliation. And importantly, this question of whether protected speech can support probable cause is one that's strangely unsettled. This is an issue that came up in a case that many of your viewers will probably remember that IJ petitioned the Supreme Court about, called Novak versus City of Parma, where a man was arrested for parodying his police department in Ohio. And there, the Sixth Circuit kind of said, well, it's an open question whether probable cause can be based on speech, but it's not an issue here because of the way that qualified immunity works. And so now in Noah's case, years later, we have a direct ruling saying no, speech cannot be the basis for probable cause that would subject you to arrest. Probable cause then creates the additional bars that we were able to overcome with the Gonzalez decision. And so all of this is sort of building to a freer ability to speak in the United States without fear of arrest. And we'll see what happens next. I anticipate the city might appeal this because it can do that with qualified immunity. It can file an immediate appeal before we go to trial. At this point, a trial that we would have on the case would only be as to damages. We effectively ran the table on all the claims. The court says, as a matter of law, these guys did violate Noah's rights, and the city itself violated their rights, which is a whole separate can of worms. As you know, when you sue a city for violating someone's rights, it's not just suing them because their employees did something. The city itself through its official policymaking or training or something like that, has to be the one that violated your rights. And here, because the mayor was a policymaker, because the city was aware of what was going on and then kind of backed him up when he did those things, the city itself is liable here too. And so for all intents and purposes, the constitutional claims here, we were able to blast through the protections of qualified immunity because this is both clearly established and obvious, and we'll be able to hold the city and the officers accountable on Noah's behalf. It just took 3 years to do that, and I suspect it'll take a little while longer because if the city appeals, that'll add another year or so to the process. But we're very confident that, this is an airtight case. Unlike a lot of city council type cases where you have, basically gadfly type folks showing up and, behaving in ways that are sometimes outside of what normal people would expect of others. This is a situation where Noah goes, he follows all the rules, he goes up, he has a written statement, he's speaking calmly, he's not screaming and shouting, he's not standing up and interrupting the meeting otherwise. This is during public comment, and for his efforts to uncover what was confirmed in a different case involving Tayvin, that there was malfeasance going on in the Newton Police Department and that this officer had violated people's rights. Noah was subjected to being arrested twice and having to go to jail and having to be tried for all of this. With the Institute for Justice, Noah's turned the tables. We've sued the city and the mayor, and now we've won on summary judgment, which is, a fairly rare occurrence in these cases. Usually you end up having to go to trial, at least on some of the facts. Here, there's no outstanding fact on any of the merits that we would need to try. It would just be a matter of talking to the jury about the damages that are owed to make Noah whole for the violation of his rights.
What advice would you have for people who are going to speak in that sort of a forum?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two ways to look at that question in terms of, when you're going to criticize the government or ask questions of the government in these forum settings like a city council meeting. And one is kind of like, well, what would I advise you to do if you were going to do that? Well, I would advise you to behave the way Noah did, which is to be calm, to make sure that you are aware of all the rules and are following these rules, not to use profane language, to try to be as persuasive as possible, because there may be some people on the city council you can win over. Maybe there are not any, but there will be people in the audience. And the way that you'll win them over in all likelihood is by doing what Noah did and being calm. And if the city or the whoever tries to shut down your speech while you're in your comment time, firmly objecting to that the way that Noah did. Obviously, if the police physically come to take you, don't resist that. Just let them take you, and we can sort that out after the fact. That doesn't mean that those are the lines for what the Constitution protects. The Constitution will protect you in many cases of shouting and acting like a lunatic. That doesn't make that behavior good behavior or behavior that I would advise for any number of reasons. And frankly, regardless of the law, the other thing that everyone should always keep in mind when they think about, well, what are my rights and how can I navigate this, is that regardless of what the legal niceties of your rights are, the more reasonable your behavior is when observed by the sort of random platonic American adult is going to have an effect on your ability to assert your rights, both proactively and then retroactively, in trying to vindicate them. Because judges decide these cases regardless of what the law is. Judges are people, and so they will see your behavior in any sort of case like this, and whether they say it or not, they're going to factor that into the way that they think. And so, all of this goes back to say, whichever route there is, whether you want to be a maximalist on your rights to speak or just be pragmatic, the better approach is to not try to push the line. And you certainly don't want to go into situations where you hope to get arrested. That's another thing that I see all the time. I'm sure you do too. We see that with the auditing process and stuff like that. Again, like, there are boundaries to your rights, but if you go somewhere and you do something that you want to be arrested for, the average person will say, well, you got what you wanted. And I think that is the sort of voice that's always in the back of judges' heads as well. The other thing to keep in mind when you're talking in public fora, like a city council meeting, is there are all these rules and there are limits on the way that you can behave. You have to sign up to speak. That doesn't mean necessarily that every jot and tittle of this is going to be implicating your First Amendment rights or not. But the more that you're aware of those rules and the more that you try to adhere to them, the better your chances will be that you'll be able to have your voice heard. And if you're silenced at that point, that there'll be an avenue for some sort of consequences for the folks that did silence you. And I just want to say also, I get a lot of requests for assistance in city council meetings that don't follow the pattern that Noah's case did. I'm not soliciting those sorts of cases. Some of them are great, like Noah's. There's another one, Rebecca Massey in Arizona, that Fire is representing, who's got a very strong case. We are very selective in the way that we pick these cases because we are building this we are building this nationwide strategy on attacking the various obstacles that stand between your rights and your remedies. In the case of speech and retaliatory arrest, there were several of those obstacles, and we've already had great success in knocking some of them down to one degree or another. And so it's very important that the next cases that follow help this strategy instead of provide examples for the government to point to. They say like, no, you do need us to be able to roll back some of these protections, because if you don't, and you allow the Noahs of the world, there will be this next class of folks who will come in and make it impossible for city councils to conduct business, because that business has to be conducted to some degree in the public view. And I don't think any of us want a world where the consequence of this is just most of the work is being done behind closed doors and we don't have an opportunity to object to it. And so we want to make sure that we adhere to at least a sense of rules that allows for us to go and object to these things. So it's a finer line to walk than people realize.
Going back to the issue of like pushing the rights to the limit, a lot of people have questions about, in this sort of context, saying fuck the police, something like that, using profane language, or having a shirt or a sign that says something like fuck the police. In other words, can they tell you that you cannot use the F word?
No, they cannot. And one of the most famous free speech cases from the Supreme Court is a case from the Vietnam era where a guy wore a jacket that said fuck the draft. You're allowed to speak that way to folks. It's like I said, there may be reasons you choose not to do that because it's not practical, or because it's not going to be effective, or not sympathetic. But saying those kinds of things are just as protected as using polite words. And another aspect of this decision here is just that. Now, we're talking about a different F word here. We're talking about the word fascist, which, kind of ironically is a word that in a case called Chaplinsky, the U.S. Supreme Court said that the fighting words doctrine allowed for a guy to be arrested who called a local official a damned fascist. And this was a long time ago. And the fighting words doctrine itself is kind of in a legal limbo. In recent decisions from the Supreme Court, several of the justices have said, like, we don't even know if this is a doctrine that applies anymore. Tying that back to what happened in Noah's case, we didn't talk about fighting words because that wasn't the city's approach, but it took a broader approach of saying defamatory language is not protected. That's another of the small categories of First Amendment exceptions to speech. It's like, okay, if you're actually saying something genuinely defamatory, you can get in trouble for that. And that's why you can be sued, for instance, for defamation under very limited circumstances, especially when that criticism is aimed at government officials.
Did you hear just calling the mayor or the police chief a fascist? I think the court said that was basically political hyperbole, not something that could be defamation. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. And this wasn't even a close case. So this kind of illustrates the point that we're talking about, which is you can say mean words to the government. And sometimes the government deserves to hear mean words, and they can't arrest you for those words. There are limits, but people should not be deterred by those limits. And the limits should be extremely tightly circumscribed. So, what actually constitutes actionable defamation in the United States is an incredibly high bar. And that's a good thing, because the other side of that bar is restrictions on your ability to speak out. And we don't want the ability of you to be sued even in civil court for, calling someone a name, let alone you being able to be arrested for that speech, which is, of course, what happened to Noah. Taking this all the way back, though, that bad words are protected speech. So if you call someone a fascist, or if you say the word fuck, that language, just like, the fanciest English words you can imagine, is protected by our First Amendment.
How can everyone else help who is interested in strengthening our First Amendment rights, our other constitutional rights? How can they help the IJ in your mission to do this?
So obviously, the one way that they can help is by supporting our work. IJ is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're a charity, so all of our work is provided to our clients free of charge because we're supported by more than 10,000, I think even more than 12,000 private donors across the United States who give us anything from a couple bucks a month to large chunks or leave money for us in their will. And all of our work is funded through this mechanism. We don't take any government money. We don't have grants. We don't get money indirectly from the government. And so the support of private individuals across the United States who care about these issues and are willing to donate to the Institute for Justice is the way that we're able to do this important work. And like I said at the very beginning, what happened to Noah happened in 2022. So we've been litigating this case so far for 3 years. Sylvia Gonzalez's case took more than 5 years to litigate from start to finish, hundreds and hundreds of attorney hours, going to court, traveling across the country, investigating these things. This is expensive stuff to do. And if you want people to do it competently, it costs a lot of money. And so we're so grateful for all the support we have. And if you would like to support us, you can go to ij.org and donate. Another thing, though, that you can do is if you see something that seems troubling, all the video that we get of these things is super helpful. And so in a case where it's the city council, you might think, well, city councils are recording what's being done, and so that should be enough. And that is true to some extent. But one aspect of Noah's case was that at one point after Noah had been taken out of city council chambers, they stopped the council meeting formally, which means the videos went off. But one of Noah's friends was there and filmed with his cell phone, the mayor kind of chastising the audience at the city council meeting that this is not the place for activism. So if you've got concerns like that, the city council is not here to hear them, and kind of like openly threatened this sort of response to critical behavior. And so like having that video is very important. We see, of course, in a lot of your work, John, the importance of having video to make to remove all doubt about what happened. And of course that can be beneficial to the government if the person that they arrested did bad stuff, but it's also incredibly beneficial to people who are proving up their case. And so in the context of speech in particular, and the Fourth Amendment as well, I think video can be incredibly helpful because it provides all this other context that a lot of us don't even think about, because there's a lot of sort of subconscious aspects when we're observing things that play into our view of whether what happened was reasonable. And if you see them on video, that's a huge help for both telling the story, potentially litigating the case. And so if you see those sorts of videos, or if you take those sorts of videos, that's always very helpful to our work in terms of being able to message and being able to litigate.
How can people find you? I mean, you're active on social media. What's the best place for people to find and interact with you?
Yeah, so I'm active on Twitter /X. I'm at PJAICOMO, P Jaicomo. You can find me there. All of IJ's work is meticulously chronicled on our website, ij.org. Every case has a case page with the lawyers attached and a description of what happened, and most of the legal filings, and oftentimes video and photographs. And so you can keep up with all of IJ's work at ij.org. And there are a number of us on all the different social media platforms. So you can stay plugged into what we're doing. We do all sorts of work outside of what I'm working on here, which is, accountability and the First Amendment. We do economic liberty stuff. We do private property stuff. We do all sorts of Fourth Amendment stuff. We're doing stuff with license plate readers through a newly launched project called the Plate Privacy Project. You name it. So if you just go to ij.org and you look at our issues, you'll see the kinds of things that we work on, and you can follow all of our cases there. We have more than 100 in courts across the United States right now.
All right, Patrick. Well, I appreciate it. Keep me updated on what ends up happening on this one.
There you go. Yeah. I think I can see your eyes moving. So I don't know what to do with it.
Thanks again to Patrick and everybody at the Institute for Justice for the work that they do every day. As I've done in many videos before, I urge you to support their work. Keep them suing the government 24/7 by donating, and you can even use my custom donation link that actually keeps track of how much money this audience has contributed to their work. Keep them suing the government in cases all over the country, just like this one. that have real world results. If I hear anything else about this one, I will update, and you can follow along by subscribing both here and at the blog at thecivilrightslawyer.com. You can follow me on X at JohnBryantESQ. Remember, our rights don't end where your fear begins. Freedom is scary. Deal with it.